So now we're going to discuss how to teach students to simplify fractions. When I was in school, I was taught that instead of calling it simplifying fractions, I was taught to reduce fractions. This is a very big problem in math because when you think of the word reduce in any other context, it means to make something smaller. Well, that is a very big problem with fractions because when we are simplifying fractions, we are not making them smaller. Instead, we are making them more simple to understand. So please do not use the term reduce fractions. Instead, emphasize the term simplify fractions, which is really what we're doing. For example, the fraction 2/4. Procedurally, you were probably taught that in order to simplify the fraction 2/4, you need to divide the numerator and the denominator by the same number. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. So it's accurate to call this simplifying fractions because the fraction 1/2 is more simple to understand or to visualize than 2/4. However, I do not want you to lean on just teaching your students the procedures related to simplifying fractions. I would prefer you also to let them rely on a visual model. So here I have the fraction 2/4. What you could do is encourage your students just to guess and check if they have to try to find fractions that can work to be equivalent to 1/4. 1/3 clearly is not the same size, so that would not help them simplify. But they may pretty easily recognize that 2/4 is the same size as the fraction 1/2, so that can allow them to understand why 2/4 can be simplified to 1/2. And then eventually, when you get to the procedure, this will make sense because they can see and remember that 2/4 is the same size as the 1/2. The next one I have is 8/12. Some students might be able to divide 8/12 by the numerator, or in the numerator divide by 4 and in the denominator divide by 4, and they could see that 8 divided by 4 is 2 and 12 divided by 4 is 3. They might be able to do that simply because they recognize that 4 is a factor of 8 and 12. However, some students may have more difficulty with that, and they may need to divide the numerator and the denominator by 2, and that becomes 4/6, which is an equivalent fraction, but it is not the most simplified version, so they would need to divide the numerator and the denominator by 2 again, and come to the conclusion that 2/3 is equivalent. But again, I would prefer your students to work with a visual model and try to find fractions that are equivalent to 12ths. So they might notice right away that 2/12 equals 1/6. This 2/12 equals 1/6. This 2/12 equals 1/6, and this 2/12 equals 1/6. So they're able to simplify 2/12 into 4/6. However, that is not the most simple solution. So they may notice that 1/3 is equivalent to 2/6, and another 1/3 is equivalent to 2/6. So therefore, the 7/12 is equivalent or simplified to 2/3.